Hey, chat, how's it going? Can we get some RGR hypes in chat? How are y'all doing? Hey, everyone. I'm going to put on my jacket really quick. I'm rushing around this morning, but we have this panel in like 10 minutes. It's going to be great. All right? Be right back. Oh, wait, this. Turn on my light for Shelly. Then, on my jacket. Come on. Oh. Hello, everyone. How are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, how the hell is going on with this shirt? Hey, how are you? Oh, wait, I want my earrings. Hey, Pixie. Hey, how are you? Only here for the Brit representation? Hey, listen, we do have Brit representation. We have Katie Montgomery. I'm hitting 9 months of E on E. Awesome. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's super heckin' great. That's super heckin' fantastic, fantabular. Good shit. All right. Well, everyone, today is going to be a stream. Very different from what we are accustomed to with internet, with the way that the internet is. But we're doing something with my law school. We're going to have someone who's like very high up in the ACLU, high up in the nonprofit I sit on the board for. We're going to be having on the state representative. Like, listen, I pulled out all the stops for this one. All right, this is going to be good. And I have questions. Let's go over the questions I have. These were collected from the panelists as well as from people online. So I feel pretty good about them. Also, so let's go over these super duper quickly. Is this what reading theory means? I guess, yeah, why not? We're going to go over these very quickly. And then we're going to go into, what do you call it? Then I'm going to go into the waiting room for people who are getting there. Because it's going to be a very quick turnaround on this stream. Yeah. Question number 1 is going to be for the social media people. Coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the 2020 presidential election, it seems clear that social media will play a larger role in state and federal legislation going forward. What role do you think social media will play in this respect in the future? I think that's a good kind of like opening discussion, right? It's kind of like, all right, what do you think that social media is going to be doing going forward? Question 2 for the legislative advocates. Likewise, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of our lives and careers. How did you primarily engage in legislative advocacy before the pandemic, and how did that change after it started? I think that's pretty good. Question 3 for the social media people. Each of you are invited because you have an interest in advocating legislative efforts for LGBTQ plus people. What have you found to be the most and least effective for strategies for achieving those ends and getting people mobilized and involved in legislative advocacy for these ends? What have you found to be the most and least effective strategies for achieving these ends and getting people mobilized and involved in legislative advocacy? I know, no blood sports, what a wild and brave panel. I know, right? Listen, this is how it actually goes over. Hold on, I got a couple messages. Da 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 da. I've been getting so many emails from like all the people on the panel like, hey, Riley, sorry I haven't been responding. I've been swamped. Hey, Riley, sorry I've been... Just like a bunch of stuff. Oh, I just got some last minute questions from one of the panelists. Let's see. The reason pushing limiter. I guess it's a good thing that I'm doing this right now. These are really good questions. All right, I just got these from Representative Titone. All right, I want to think about how to incorporate these. Coming out of the COVID-19. All right. I'm going to take these and just kind of like put them under here. I'm just going to shove them under there because it's kind of the same question, right? Like, what are the most and least effective strategies? Do you think that hashtags are effective, and what platforms do you think are best to focus on? We always hear for social content creators, but where are my unsociable content creators? Hey, there you go. What's going to do the structure? So I organized it basically by collecting questions from everyone beforehand. All of these kind of go under here. Hello there, Riley. Hello there. All right, I'm going to join the room. I'm just going to leave this down here. All right, I'm going to join the call. Let's see. Are you a facilitator mod? Yes, I am. Oh, wait, hold on. Riley, I am the Senate. True. I have to be really tight on time, though, because I'm moving a lot of moving parts. The ship is moving because I make it so. All right, starting this panel. Open. Join with computer audio. There we go. All right. That should be good. I'm going to put these over here. Oh. Let's see. How do I let people in? How do I do this? Ask to start video. Oh, hey, Katie, are you in?
Hi.
Hi, Katie, how are you?
You can hear me. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You look nice.
Thank you. You as well. Oh my God, I am so excited for this.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I don't know. I hope I wasn't supposed to prepare anything more than I did in that email.
No, you did wonderful. You actually asked some of the best questions for the panelists. Hey, Josie, how's it going?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got your email. If you need to cut out for a couple minutes, that's fine. So basically,
it's 15 minutes. I have an interview with my executive director for another interview to hire somebody.
Okay.
Gosh, good luck.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So basically, I'll explain it again once we get to 12. The way that we're going to be working, so there's a lot of people with a hard commitment at an hour. So what we're going to be doing is I have pre-prepared questions I solicited from both the panelists as well as people on social media. Hey, Dylan, how's it going?
It's going okay. I'm sorry I didn't send any questions. Yesterday I was yelling at health insurance companies and it was crazy. Sorry.
You're fine. We have more than enough questions. All right. And it's going to be an hour. So we're going to be on a tight schedule. But I think I have it set up so that this should be a clean and a tight ship run. So it should go over.
One quick thing. When I go offline, I'm actually going to be able to stay on the Zoom because I'm doing it through Teams meeting on the next one. So I'll just do this.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. There are more flags than people.
As long as you mute.
Yeah, it's totally absolutely fine. All right, let's see. I think we have. All right, so now so we have all the social media people except for Destiny. Now we have. Hey, Representative Tatone, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
We can't hear you.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend. This is wonderful. I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity for discussion. So thank you so much for taking time to be here.
My pleasure.
All right. Let's see. Destiny, get in here. We also need Jeremy. We need. Hey, how can I get renamed?
Yes.
Oh,
Hey,
yes.
yeah, Riley, it's me.
Oh, Jeremy.
I wasn't. Yes, hi. Yeah, sorry, I'm not able to rename myself. I don't know if that's my shortcoming or a setting, but
let's see.
I can't either.
Sure. Just tell me what you want your name renamed to.
Just an
Jeremy.
eggplant emoji. Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Jeremy Lemaster. My he, they pronouns is fine. Thank you.
Yep. Representative Tatone, do you want to just be listed as Representative Tatone?
You could just put rep in front of my name, not just to put the prefix there.
Yeah. All right, there we go. If anyone else needs their name changed, you can let me know right now. Yeah, no, I can easily take care of that. All right, we are waiting for, let's see, we have 3 more people. So we need Arlie, who I believe, I haven't gotten any emails from them that they would be late. So we want to wait for them to get here. Grayson Alexander might be a little bit late. He sent me a message that he might be showing up. That his car got into some trouble last night.
Gosh.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, life affects us all. Oh, hold on. Let me get the Zoom link.
Representative Tatone, you know, I work with the National Center for Transgender Equality. Do you have any contacts with us, or do you need contacts with us?
Man, I used to contact with Kira or Mara. Sorry.
Yeah, Mara's
I know
gone in
she's-
a week.
Yeah, I know she's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I marched with you guys in the Pride Parade in World Pride in New York, and like nobody knew who I was.
Really? So
Yeah,
I
really
might
sad
pass
about
I'm gonna pass your name over to our policy team as well as our national organizer, just to make sure that we keep you abreast of anything that's going on, and you can do the same. I'm gonna make
Great.
sure that introduction happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a large new staff, so we just got to make sure we keep all those connections alive. So yeah,
Great.
and
No, I
Rigo's
appreciate
great. Rigo's awesome, the incoming executive director.
I was on a panel with him at Victory Institute at the conference a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
All right, let's see. I think we have almost everyone. Who are we missing at this point? We have, I think, the majority of the panel. Grayson is going to be a little bit late, like I said earlier. Are we missing one social media person? Is I guess my question. We're missing. No. All right, we have everyone except for. Jeremy, we can't see you. All right, then yes, we have everyone, or at least everyone who's supposed to be here. So thank you all so much for being here. With that, if there's nothing else that people want to go over, then I'd like to get right into it because people have limited time. So if you don't mind, I'd like to introduce the panel a little bit, and then I'll have people go around and introduce themselves briefly before we get into the topics. So thank you everyone for being here. This is the first panel that I've hosted. I've talked about how I'm a law student on social media. This is the first event that I have hosted where it's kind of very formally bridging my law school experience or my connection with my law school community with my experience on social media. Going into this next year, especially coming out of this past year, something that became very apparent to me is that with the COVID-19 pandemic and with the recent presidential election, that social media is going to be playing a stronger role in legislative efforts going forward. And I figured that this would be a really good opportunity to be able to bring together people both who have lots of legislative experience and also people who have experience in social media to try and figure out the best practices for how to be able to tackle this phenomenon going forward. So the first question I'm going to have, we have 2 groups of panelists on here. We have panelists who are experienced with social media in particular, and then panelists who are experienced using or who are experienced with legislative advocacy. So the first question I want to have as an opener is to the social media people on the question of what do you think the role is going to be? Oh, Grayson, hello. I'm asking the first question. For social media people, what do you think is going to be the role of social media going forward in national legislative efforts? And anyone can jump in.
I suppose informing people in one sense. I mean, especially if we're talking about like LGBT rights. I mean, in the UK, for example, our press is just like hardline anti-trans. And so it only publishes like anti-trans stuff. So if anything positive happens, they just don't publish it. And people just don't know about it at all. And I know lots of people who follow me and similar UK trans accounts say, like, I only knew about this court case because you were talking about it, or I only know what this even means because you're talking about it. So I guess that's quite important, because if you don't know what's going on, you can't really do anything about it, can you?
That's right. And also, by the way, I'm abridging this because originally I was planning for a 2-hour panel, but we have to bring it to 1 hour. So when people begin speaking, if you could please introduce yourselves, by the way. I sent out everyone's bios and short descriptions on social media, but just in the name of timeliness.
Okay, I'm Katie Montgomery. Hi, I argue on the internet.
All right.
I guess I would go next. So I'm Josie Rose Caballero. I am the project manager for the National Center for Transgender Equality, running the U.S. Transgender Survey, and I also stream on Twitch at Josie Rose C. And one of the things that came to mind when I heard the social media thing, as a researcher, it's very important for us to make sure that we have the people who are the respondents for quantitative data, and we use social media to get out the word and get it out to communities that are hard to reach, like the trans community. A lot of us live online, so it's important for us to know how to connect with people and connect to people with social media, so we can make sure that those stories are captured in the quantitative data analysis that we need. So, and also getting out that information once we get those respondents as well. But social media is probably one of the largest tools that we have as researchers for the trans community to collect that data. So.
Hi, my name is Dylan Burns. Currently, I am a political consultant with 21st Century Democrats Political PAC, and I was just reappointed on the environmental board in the city of College Park. I think that when it comes to social media use, there's two main uses, I think. Number one is disseminating information. Before, when you wanted to get the word out about LGBTQ plus activism, it was a lot of kind of backroom you had to do it through, say, magazines, or you had to do it through like clubs and hotspots for like gay activity, LGBTQ plus activity. But social media gives us a better way to reach people directly and inform them about events. Recently, I was with PG Changemakers and PG Pride, and we were doing a vaccine event and handing out toiletries completely free of service. It was a good way to kind of give like a good image to see how LGBTQ plus people are directly assisting people during COVID. And a lot of people who showed up only found out about it through social media. And so while I think mailers are still important, I think magazines and the traditional ways are still important. It gives us another avenue to reach people and get them connected to resources, whether that be physical resources or like just in contact with representatives. And another thing I would say is fundraising, that while I don't think that when it comes to social media use, it's really particularly helpful in turning people over to your side when it comes to voting in particular, I think it's good for getting your supporters and reminding them the importance of like donating to your political PAC or donating to your cause, and kind of getting the hook, line, and sinker approach to getting their dollar into the organization of for example, Free State and other organizations like that. So I think those are the two main uses for social media. Definitely when it comes to LGBTQ plus activism in particular.
Oh, Destiny, we can't hear you.
Well, who said I was talking to you?
Oh,
Pretty presumptuous. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, my name is Stephen Bonnell. My online moniker is Destiny. I agree largely with what's already been said. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of agreement here. It seems like the most important thing in terms of like online spaces and LGBT people are the two sides of the same coin. You've got the dissemination of information, so getting updates related to health or care available or news stories out, and then also just the opportunity to find and join communities in an easier way that sometimes can be more challenging in real life, especially depending upon where you live.
all right. Thank you. And now to kind of piggyback off of that subject, a question to our legislative advocates. So the COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of our lives and all of our careers. I want to ask you all, with your work experience, especially recently, how did you primarily engage in legislative advocacy before the pandemic, and how did that change after it started? And anyone can go in any order.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. I'm Grayson. Before the pandemic, I was actually working on Capitol Hill for Texas 29, Sylvia Garcia, on the impeachment trial, as well as the census. And currently I work with like servers, bartenders, hospitality professionals to help them create relationships with their local and state elected officials so that they can have a voice at the table when decisions are being made. I think this is a great question for me anyway, because that's kind of how I am now finding myself through social media. Capitol Hill, when the pandemic happened, a lot of us on Capitol Hill that were just beginning our careers kind of lost our jobs, and we're left to kind of find a new way to stay involved and, you know, restart our careers. And that involved learning a lot of social media and how people put that information out there. I think an interesting point, tying back to the question before, is that there's some tools that I've learned that social media has that we can't take advantage of. For example, like in Congress, we have particular rules and things that we have to go by, franking laws and things like that, as far as what mail we can send out, when, who we can contact, how many people we can contact, and things like that. And those are rules that people through social media aren't really beholden to. And so I think that if we're smart, we will be starting to look to how we can utilize those types of things to get that information that everybody's already touched on out there. And how do we turn that information into actual action and not just like, hey, here it is, but what are we doing with it? What's important?
I think for a lot of largely online people like myself, I don't think we had to change too much in terms of how we did advocacy before and after. I know in the real world, the way that advocacy and outreach happened changed significantly, you know, especially during the election season. You know, do you go to people's houses? Do you wear masks? You know, a lot of the in-person advocacy was tuned down a lot for fear of the pandemic. But I think online, I think we already, for those of us that existed in the space prior to this, we already kind of had all the tools for communication, and we already kind of knew how to operate in this environment. And I think the pandemic just kind of gave more power to some of those voices online. That's what it felt like. So if you were positioned to take advantage of it, I think you did pretty well, both like in a monetary sense for viewers growing, and then kind of in an outreach sense in terms of platform growth and people kind of hearing your message.
That makes sense. Representative Tatone, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Well, you know, before the pandemic, I was outreaching to a lot of people through Twitter. That's my primary thing. By the way, I'm Representative Tatone, she, her, House District 27, Colorado, first trans person to be elected here in Colorado. And it was always really cool to interact with people online before, giving them relevant information. You know, it's always like timely stuff. That's what's really important. And the pandemic really had so much information that came out, and we had to make sure people knew what the latest facts were, where to go find things, how to get testing, where to go if you felt sick, and then how to get a vaccine, and then how to get unemployment insurance. We had so many people who had to have unemployment claims. So making sure that people knew that I was actually helping people with that was super important, because people were going literally broke because they weren't working and they needed help. And they didn't know that they could actually reach out to me to help. And even if I wasn't their representative, I would still help them anyway, because I don't want to see them lose their house or lose their jobs or anything else that they might have because they didn't have an income coming in. So we really used social media and even email to some extent to make sure that we were reaching out with every latest update that was out there, because there was so much information in it, and I felt that, you know, I was a trusted source that people could count on. And I think that a lot of people view people that they follow on social media, when they have a good reputation, that they are trustworthy. And that's really important, because there's a lot of bad information out there and you have to sort through it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Jeremy, I see that, so we don't have you on camera, but I see that you have your hand up. Do you have any thoughts on the subject?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Hello, and thank you, Riley, for putting this together. My name is Jeremy Lemaster. Pronouns are he and they. I'm the executive director for FreeState Justice, formerly known as Equality Maryland. We do policy advocacy at the state level and provide direct client legal services for low-income LGBTQ folks. And so, you know, I kind of have two kind of quick thoughts. You know, the one really just on how the original question sort of on how legislation strategy has sort of changed for us in our state with the sort of pandemic. I think every state legislature is different, and the ways, and even within your legislatures, each individual committee may or may not have adapted to technology differently during COVID. But I know pre-COVID, the majority of our work was done sort of in Annapolis, like in the rooms, of our General Assembly, of attending these hearings, providing testimony, and kind of sitting in on voting sessions, just to kind of be a person in the room to kind of, more or less monitor, our representatives and ensure that they are, not sneaking in any sort of poison pill amendments, or that, they're not trying to kind of mess up, elements of the legislation we're trying to run. One thing that I noticed this session, when we started moving towards virtual environments, all of these things had to be, streamed on YouTube, and that allowed for a whole new audience that previously wasn't able to be in the room in Annapolis to be able to kind of just tune in and sort of be there present and watch. And I know for us, it was actually really helpful for some of our policies because, in our state, even though we're a super majority Democratic state, a lot of our Democrats still are very conservative in a number of ways when it comes to LGBTQ issues. And we had some of our committees where these conservative Democrats were really, who kind of pretend to be or proclaim that they're LGBTQ allies, were very much intentionally sort of messing up some of our legislation. And it was great to kind of have a sort of a record of that and to have an audience for that. And, I don't think these legislators realized that they were being watched. I think they gotten so used to only having like a handful of folks in a room, as they're kind of in committees debating. And so when we had this new audience, we had sort of these viral clips to be able to kind of rapidly deploy, send out, and to kind of really activate folks to really respond and kind of hold them accountable. And so I'm kind of excited to see what this is going to mean come next session. I imagine that there's going to be a concerted effort to try to roll back this sort of increased, access and transparency to the process, and more of a re-emphasis on the kind of in-person, closed-door kind of style of policy making that they were used to. But I know that's on everyone's mind of, ensuring now that we've sort of, opened this door, not to have it get closed again. And so I'm kind of excited to see how COVID plus social media has sort of even just changed the ways in which the legislative process is done, on the state level, because we don't really necessarily have like, C-SPAN or things like that.
That's actually really interesting. Or sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask a question about that? I'm actually really interested. On YouTube, there was a channel. I don't remember the lawyer. There was like a channel that blew up. And it was like, I think anybody could either join publicly, like this Zoom for a courtroom, or all of the court proceedings were uploaded onto YouTube. And it was funny because, a lot of people enjoyed watching. A lot of people laughed at some of the cases. A lot of people had input to give. And I think that ultimately, by the end of that, this was like as you brought up, it's kind of like a new world. Like nobody's had that level of transparency before for some of these like local proceedings. I'm talking about a courtroom now, but you're talking about, like public meetings. Do you think that something like that going forward is a positive experience? Do you think that there are any negatives related to that? And ultimately, how do you feel like the legislators on both sides felt about that like ultra transparent environment?
Yeah, I think I'll be honest that I think, one kind of issue I foresee, and I think in the same way that it is providing a platform for folks in terms of like, especially in like testimony, right, for hearings, is providing a greater platform for some folks. It's also providing that same platform for opposition, right? Yeah. And so even in our state, again, where in Maryland, we haven't seen, these, blatantly anti-trans youth sports bans or bathroom bills or whatever, we don't have those legislation pieces coming up, but we still have individual, representatives in our state and, opposition folks, constituents who are any bill we're running, doesn't even matter what the bill is. They're kind of just using it as a chance to, express their opposition to the community writ large, right? And so it's kind of that, that double-edged sword piece of, yes, we get increased, platforming, but so does hate to some extent. And so that's kind of to that piece. For the legislators piece, I'll just be frank that I think most folks, especially ones that I've noticed are kind of more career politicians, are very much prefer to kind of do their deal making behind closed doors, right? And
Yeah.
I think we even saw where a lot of they kind of started to learn quickly. You know, you would kind of see how committee chairs, you know, there's a lot more control over when mics were on and off, for example. And so there's a lot of times they would just, you know, in committee hearings, they know they're being broadcast on YouTube. They'd cut the mics and just whisper or talk to each other and then put the mics back on. And so there was this kind of like, they even had already started kind of censoring themselves in that way. And so and if our leadership, like the committee leadership and stuff is doing that, I can only and this is, you know, folks that are supposed to be our allies. You know, I can only imagine that is, I think, going to be indicative of them trying to kind of still be in control of what they're presenting and what's kind of getting shown.
When I had my short stint in the Maryland General Assembly, not elected, but as like just getting coffee for people, the way people behaved, this was right before, this was when Senator Mike Miller was still there, and this was the Senate president, if anybody didn't know. And it was right before we started getting like larger amounts of transparency due to COVID and more people want to be able to watch this stuff from home. And the way people just behaved around even the interns was astonishing. I would hear like very like inappropriate comments at times about different minority groups. I remember once hearing like, this was during the time when a lot more women were running for office, and I was getting coffee for the like more conservative side of the aisle, and just hearing them like openly laugh at the idea of more women running. Like I thought a woman was gonna, like, I remember one comment, like something like one person saying, I thought a woman was going to run against me this year. Crazy they're doing that these days. And like later, just hearing like certain disparaging comments about Prince George's County and that type of stuff. It's hard for me to imagine that in the time of 1 to 2 years, that behavior has stopped, but it's going to be the more like, oh, we'll wait till after session to say this, or, oh, let's turn off the mic quick. Even in streaming and online stuff, you'll see like, hey, 1 second, let me mute. And then you'll just mute quick and you'll do the same thing. This exists in most places where stuff is live streamed. So I don't think it's going to mean like a complete change of culture, but it probably would mean that we're going to catch slip ups a lot more on footage, and it would be easier to hold people accountable.
So something I'm nervous about for these things is when in like legal world and law terms, there are words that mean something very specific, and then in colloquial use, they mean something completely different, or, you know, with slightly different meaning. And if you're watching all these like live stream legal stuff, it could be very easy to misinterpret or even willfully misinterpret some of the stuff they're saying, and, you know, instantly blow it up to a huge platform before any experts or journalists have got to cut in and then like set the narrative very fast. And I know like the anti-trans people are doing that whenever they get to go and live tweet a, you know, a court case or something. They're always spinning the most ridiculous narrative that the newspapers will just publish before they've even read like the judgment or anything. So I guess there's something to be nervous about with that too.
Yeah, it's not even the most ridiculous narrative sometimes that's the most harmful. I've noticed, I was working on the Fight for 15 in DC to remove the tip minimum, and we were actually successful, but we had enough outside lobbyists come in and rally and tell bartenders and servers and hospitality professionals that like, hey, if you remove the tip minimum wage, you're not going to make tips anymore, and you're going to make less money than you ever made. And this is going to be awful for you. Have you looked at what's happening in New York? Da, 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 da. And next thing you know, the city council actually rolled back what voters had wanted, right? Voters wanted, and it was just a simple messaging, right? It was a ton of social media and people coming out there, and it was simply saying, save our tips. That was it. And it had people who worked and made tips scared and showing up to tell city council, like, we don't want this. We don't want tips. We don't want, and I could see how that might also be used even in LGBTQ circles.
Arlie, I saw that you were going to speak earlier. Do you have any thoughts? You can speak on anything that we've been talking about.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes. My name is Arlie, they or she pronouns. And this is such an amazing panel of folks. There's so much good info. So just kind of building off some of what you all are saying, I think when we think about how our legislative advocacy work has changed in the past year, I think one of the big questions that everyone's getting at is, what are the good things that came out of this, right? Out of this sort of quarantine world that we've learned about legislative advocacy, and then what are the things that weren't so positive? And so thinking about, you know, the fight against all of these anti-trans bills and how this legislative advocacy world has changed before, in the before days, we've really worked to get people excited by coming to in-person lobby days, right? Showing up at these hearings, meeting their legislative representatives, and really creating those relationships. Benefits, you're in person with people. You are actually learning about other folks and creating community. But drawbacks, it wasn't as accessible, right? So now when we look at this new kind of world we've created of attending hearings virtually and having virtual rallies and inviting our legislators to come talk to us online. There are a lot of benefits, and access is a huge one. Like we talked about, we can immediately be transported into the hearing room or into the courts when things are happening. We can ping our legislators online more easily. And so there's a lot there. But some of the drawbacks, in terms of social media are some of what you all have touched on too. These sound bites are incredible in terms of the ways we can say, look at what this legislator just said and did, and pass it around the internet. But it can work in harmful ways too, because we're not creating those more lasting relationships and those in-person kind of connections with people. So I think it's been a challenge all around on the legislative advocacy side. And I hope we've learned a lot from it and will continue to kind of change our ways and take the good stuff from this experience to improve the way we advocate for LGBTQ people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To kind of piggyback, so changing the subject a little bit, but kind of keeping with the theme, this is a question mainly for the social media people. So we talked a little bit earlier about some of the main uses for social media, mainly disseminating information and for fundraising. But each of you I also invited because it seems that you have a particular interest in advocating legislative efforts for LGBTQ plus people. So what have you found to be the most effective and least effective strategies for actually mobilizing people, mobilizing your followers and your base to take action? For example, like what platforms have you found to be the most effective? Like have things like hashtags or other kind of like small strategies on social media more effective or less effective? Like what have you found to be useful for actually getting people to go out and do things like canvassing or talking to their representatives or their legislators?
I think that when it comes to political advocacy, I think that different people fill different roles. And traditionally, I think it's really hard online to get people to do actual in-person advocacy because the audiences that we're connected to aren't restricted to a specific locale. So even for a federal initiative, there's going to be 50 different states in the US that you would have to get people to show up to events for, which can be really challenging. Or not even challenging. It's more like, I don't even know how you would know how well you're doing with any of that type of advocacy, because it's hard to track data, like how many, like, can I get a survey and how many of you showed up in this state and this state and this state and this state and this state? So it feels like if you're doing online stuff in general, it's going to be a lot harder to see the results of kind of that in-person advocacy. So obviously I did in-person canvassing events, which I thought was a lot of fun. But that type of stuff requires like a deliberate, concentrated effort. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of organizing. For me to get people to show up and do stuff, I think it was two major things. One was just continually advocating for whatever particular thing you are advocating for. So for me, it was a mayoral race in my hometown, and then it was a Senate race. But then the other probably more important thing was just showing up and being there, because people want like FaceTime with, whatever influencer, talent, artist, whoever they identify with, that's going to show up there and work as well.
When it comes,
sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. I think like how to get people involved in things. One of the most useful things I found was where it's we need to fill in this government submission by this date, or we need to write a letter or something, and that can seem very intimidating, and people don't, they're very keen to help, but they don't know how to do it or what to do. And I've done a couple of live streams where I've just like sat down and opened the form up and just talked people through it, like really super simple, step by step. This is what I'm writing here. Here's some other things I could consider. This is why I'm not writing this thing. And then just be like, look, that took, half an hour or whatever. And I think that's made a big difference because, so many people want to help and just don't know where to start.
I've tried to organize events before using the internet, particularly on like the city council level. And the biggest issue I always ran into is when you just make a post, you can like just hope people show up, but you never really know if someone's going to show up if you just make a post. It's so important to have that one-on-one communication with people. The best way to get somebody on Twitter, Facebook, or on any platform really to go to the event is to move it from, say, a tweet or a Facebook post to DMs, to private messages where like, hey, I saw you like this post. Here's more information I can give you. Here's some the actual date and time. Or maybe you can be like, guilt them a little bit, like, hey, I actually got the supplies already ready for you. Like, I'm super excited for you to come up. Like, do your best, whatever you can in that private communication to be like, we want you here and we value your participation. Because all the events that I ended up organizing on the city council level, when it came to like the amount of people who showed up who I didn't directly talk to, it's always like 2 or 3. Like 80% of the people who show up are the people you directly talk to in private messages or in person. And so when it comes to making social media posts without any direct contact follow-up, it's like casting a very wide net with very loose knots where people can easily just pass straight through it. You need to have that direct one-on-one communication, either in DMs, through a phone call or something after they interact with the post in some manner.
Real quick on that, I really want to pick up on something that Katie said. I think it was Katie that just said it. When we were doing our canvassing events, we were trying to kind of like iterate from one event to the next to figure out like, okay, well, what do we need to do? We've got so much interest online, but not many people will show up, right? You might get like 500 responses on a survey. You might get 20 people that actually show up in person. I think that Katie said something that is unbelievably true, which is that everybody or a lot of people want to help and they want to do something, but they don't always know how. And I notice that sometimes when watching, go campaign for Bernie or go campaign for, a particular candidate. And it's like, okay, yeah. Okay. Like sometimes you'll get sent to a website, sometimes you'll text somebody, but like a lot of these are cold and they're kind of scary and you'll lose like 99% of the interest because people just don't know what to do. And I found that like one of the most important things for getting people to canvas was I need to make the process of you sitting in front of your computer to being in front of a potential voter's door as streamlined and as easy as possible. So if that means fill out the form, here's your hotel room, we can set up carpools, like whatever dumb logistic thing you can take care of, or whatever dumb like knowledge hurdle you can get over. And it might be something as simple as filling out a form on a live stream, or it might be something as simple as showing somebody or talking somebody through a process. I think that especially online, we take for granted how easily people are discouraged from participating in certain things. The rest of the world has figured this out too, because in the real world, if you turn on any old person radio, and I listen to a lot of AM radio, you'll constantly hear commercials where it's like, are you receiving all of your Social Security benefits? You might not know. Call a lawyer; they'll help you figure it out. You've got people on Twitter today that are trying to walk people through like, hey, there's a new child tax credit. If you file a tax return, you can get money in advance. But a lot of people don't know this. When it came to signing up at the healthcare exchanges on the ACA, a lot of people don't know this, right? So all of this carries over into your real world advocacy too. Assume that people want to help, but you have to make it as easy as possible. And then what Dylan said afterwards, sometimes following up with confirmations of a commitment is also a big deal as well. For our canvassing things, we had people that were dedicated to just making a phone call and getting that verbal commitment. Oftentimes it's good because the people are reminded, and then if they make the verbal commitment, they feel a little bit more obliged to actually show up.
One thing on that I saw there was some UK law about trans rights that was going on, and the anti-trans side made this super easy form that you could just basically write your name on and click send. And they ended up getting 20,000 or something submissions, which looked really good in numbers for them. But because of the nature of it, was, submitting evidence, they had 20,000 people submitted evidence and it was all exactly the same. So I think streamlining is definitely important, but also in a way that people don't just click one thing and then just I've done my advocacy now, and then it'll just get ignored because it's the same as everyone else's.
Grayson, sorry.
Grayson, we can't hear you.
Sorry. To Katie's point, what Steven's talking about here is good, but the problem is, especially with things like these copy and paste emails and the bots that we saw come about when Hillary was running and stuff like that in 2016. The problem there has been offices know how to sort through. They have the technology that can scan through and be like, oh, this is the same email copy and pasted. We'll just chuck all of this into the same email box and send out this copy and paste form. And people don't love receiving that, right? It doesn't make you feel like you really heard from your representative. because you're like, okay, yeah, somebody copy and pasted this. So I think that it is important to know that your representatives do need to respond to you and to make it as easy as possible to streamline that process. But you do have to make sure that there is something unique about that reach out and what you're asking for or what you're saying, because it can very easily get lost if you're just doing it through something like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste and send it to every senator and every congressperson across the country.
Yeah, just to add on to that super quickly, and then I want to ask another question to move forward. But that's absolutely true. Like when I was working in Annapolis for a delegate this past session, yeah, whenever we would get like a spam email, and it was pretty easy to tell when you get a spam email, right? It's just basically the exact same email with the same subject pattern or the same subject, and then just like a different name over and over and over. We would be able to like develop algorithms to just like sort them all into folders, and then we would just like make one copy paste reply all email to send all of them. The best ways, at least in Maryland, to be able to get in touch with your legislator is to call, set up an appointment, and to make sure that you always begin with saying, my name is so-and-so and I am from this zip code, and making sure that you say that your zip code is in their district, right? They will almost always respond to people who are in their districts. If you don't start with that, then they're not going to really care that much about you. So just like to put that out there, if you want to be able to get in touch with your representative, that's probably the best way to do so, which everyone should. All right. Now the same question to our legislative advocates, but in the kind of the inverse. So now you've all heard the ways that people on social media, or who primarily use social media, try to mobilize their bases. What are the primary ways that you all mobilize your bases for legislative advocacy? And are there any lessons that, or are there any recommendations that you would make based on what you've heard to help people on social media better mobilize the people that they want to mobilize?
I can, Jeremy here, I can actually I was about to kind of talk through that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even before my current role at Free State, I did graduate studies in women's and gender studies and taught at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And I started teaching there, I think 2011. And in kind of our, feminism, 101 courses, we had a dedicated content to kind of what we called social media feminism, and sort of like feminist knowledge production in social media spaces. And students would kind of set up their own like Tumblrs, because Tumblr circa 2010 to 13, I think, was kind of its own little feminist knowledge production bubble to some extent. And really just kind of demonstrating how social media can function as consciousness raising, right? So the same way we had consciousness raising groups for many different social movements, across space and time, social media can recreate those same environments. And I think for me, that is kind of the challenge that I've sort of been facing with in the sort of legislative advocacy piece of, really before we can even get to a stage of a policy, right, and getting support for a policy, there's like this kind of like education that needs to occur. And I think for me, case in point is really kind of, in Maryland, we were working with a coalition to decriminalize failure to obey a lawful order, just because it was, being shown to disproportionately being used against a number of different communities, including, trans folks and trans folks of color. And it more or less is an arbitrary way for folks to get sort of stopped and harassed or detained and booked. And in that process, we started kind of engaging with potential voters constituents and legislators. And we quickly realized that, in thinking about homeless folks or sex workers or things like that, that they don't even think of them as like people or as community members. And that we had to even kind of go 3 steps back to actually do concerted education around what it means to be homeless or in survival sex work or, in these different spaces, right? And so it was like, we had to go 3 steps back and actually just focus on education on these base issues. And so to some extent, it's, I see it now, and now is like, there's some value in the ways in which social media has sort of allowed for even like feminism, right? For like this kind of rapid diffusion of things like intersectionality or like the rapid diffusion of like gender neutral pronouns, right? And that I think like 20 years ago wasn't really a thing. But it kind of goes back to that same point of like, it is that double-edged sword, because now we are seeing, bans on critical race theory, and literally, people who are trying to ban critical race theory probably have no idea what critical race theory even is, if you ask them. And so, that there's that kind of issue area education piece that is just this super important precursor before we can even do the kind of policy work. And I know, like in Maryland, for example, we're really long-term thinking about kind of the sex work decrim space. We're starting very, very local in Baltimore City. We're doing some kind of surveying of the NIMBYs, the not my backyard, types of folks, so like homeowners, small business owners, neighborhood associations, right, to identify the stigma, right, and then to create messaging and programming and education, right, that'll actually sort of counter that before we then even kind of talk about like an actual policy and what policies we would want to see for sex worker rights. And that's just happening on a local level because we can't show up at the state house with anything looking like, sex work decrim at this point because of just where the state is at in terms of its shared understanding of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Other legislative advocates, to go off the same question. So what have you found to be like the most effective means for mobilizing your constituents compared to like things that we've already talked about previously?
Can I go ahead? Sorry, I was gone, everybody. Thank you for giving me that space. I had to do another meeting. Very busy. Okay. So one thing, and I'm going to always bring back to the research because the research is very important. The U.S. Trans Survey is one of those pieces of data that we go and use with our legislative experts and policy advocates to ensure that they have the numbers to be able to combat the worst arguments. Because if you can go into a state house and say, hey, by the way, children are 9 times more likely to attempt and commit suicide than their cis peers, that's like hard evidence, right? And it's like, whoa, like now you completely change the context of saying like we're not advocating for children, right? And you have that information readily available. And I think it's very important as legislative advocates and as to have that data in your back pocket, because with that data, you're able to actually make sound arguments that aren't based on just your own feelings and emotions, but actually hard evidence and facts. And I'm telling you, when you bring out a statistic that say, hey, kids are dying, you will activate a lot of people to be able to fight for your cause, because I mean nobody wants children in their hands, right? So it's really important that we have that type of data, as well as just the discrimination piece as well, as how half of trans people don't seek medical help because they're afraid of discrimination or having to explain their own medical care to their doctor, right? Like just stats like that shows we're able to use that data. So yeah, I'm a quantitative data girl, so I'm going to keep bringing that up for this entire process.
I kind of want to add to that real quick too, that, I think I definitely agree that data is extremely helpful, especially with folks that are kind of in our ally lane in terms of legislators, definitely into getting folks to be able to sponsor legislation or to vote our way on legislation. Where I've seen the data just not have any impact or effect is with folks that are not already kind of in that allied space. And so for me, there's this piece of like, I don't know how to, I don't have an answer to this, but it's like, when at the base, the values are not in alignment, like where at its core, folks don't think that sex workers have rights, right? And even if we show or demonstrate how horrible or terrible it is to sort of exist as a homeless person or, sex worker, et cetera, there's this like veneer that just kind of goes overhead is like, oh, well, that's a lifestyle choice and I don't care about the data. And so I'm just like, I don't know how to get to that values shift piece and I don't know if data works with everyone on that values piece. So, and that's just kind of an open question or thought that I had.
I don't think, or go ahead.
As the only legislator here, so I live this stuff every day, and you're right, Jeremy, that data goes so far in certain areas, but when it comes to trans rights, usually data doesn't matter. It's about, oh well, this is my religious belief, and screw the data. Who cares? It doesn't matter. And what I found, in a lot of cases, personal stories are really powerful, especially when it comes from people who are cisgender white guys who may be Christians, who are saying, that they accept their trans kid. Like that's super powerful to say, hey, look, you know what? These are not all mutually exclusive things. You can be a Christian, white, heterosexual guy and still support trans people. And that goes a long way when it comes to the committee rooms and how legislators do end up feeling. But you can't just be one person. It has to be, you know, not one outlier, because it's like, well, it's just that one person. You know, it needs to be more compelling. But when it comes to really getting people out there, sometimes you need to even go through like the little sliver of things that intersect. So when I ran my bill on the banning the gay and trans panic defense, you know, we took it as like a criminal justice angle to it. And, you know, Republicans love that stuff. They want to put criminals behind bars. They don't want people getting away with anything, right? So, you know, my bill ended up passing with only one no vote in the entire General Assembly. And that's huge, because if there's anything that says like gay or trans in it, like, you know, they freak out and they like run the other way. But we were able to frame it in a way that they can agree on. So sometimes that's ways you can move people, is through a slightly overlapping thing that occurs there that you can really accentuate, and it kind of drowns out like, oh, well, we're protecting gay and trans people, but it's about criminal justice, and you can kind of move people that way.
Find shared values, like you share values with you know, every human on earth to some type of value, and you can keep going back to like first principles and stuff, and just being like, we both agree murder's wrong, so let's start there, and then, you know, build up to the next bit, rather than trying to just start with trans kids that need healthcare.
So I'm hugely sympathetic to the data argument. I love data. I hate stories. I hate that people's minds are changed by stories, but it is absolutely the way that people process information in the real world. And I would actually amend some of the early statements. I don't think you have to find that sliver of values where you align. I think that most people align fundamentally like 95% of their values. There's usually just one stupid thing or concept that they have related to an issue that's just keeping them completely on the other side of the fence. So like, as a personal anecdote, when I talk to conservatives when we talk about things like, should kids be allowed to have puberty blockers? You know, the framing of that is always like these crazy malicious psychiatrists that are coming from gender theory schools to feed, you know, puberty blockers to turn your children into February, like whatever crazy stuff they have. Every single parent, every single parent has had some issue with their child, be it medical, be it behavioral, be it something. Every parent has had that experience of having an issue with their child. And there is so much stress and anxiety that goes into that. You know, is my kid normal? Did I do something wrong? Is this particular thing that he has, is this going to mess up his life? Is that my fault? And I think that when you reframe, like I've done this a lot with the puberty blockers argument, when you reframe that, like that cold, detached, here are the stats, here are the things, and it's more like hey, does your kid have ADHD, or does he have some other type of behavior problem? Can you imagine if you're trying to figure out as a parent what the best like path forward is, and you're having a conversation with your doctor, and it's between you, the doctor, and your child? Could you imagine like some third party that has no stake whatsoever in the well-being of your child trying to insert themselves into that conversation? Like, it is the worst feeling in the world. And then you can always, I think that once you've established the narrative, you can always like hop back to the data, because the data is like a really good follow-up. You know, like, hey, you know, like 50% of children that have this thing do that, or this or that. But once you've really hooked into that personal story, it's really, really, really hard for somebody to come out and disagree with that shared value. Like, you know, actually, no, I do want more people involved in decisions that I make with my children between me, him, and the doctor. Like, I really do want it. Like, that's not going to be the case. So I do agree, like harping on those shared values and then kind of like building the framing up from there, and then following up with data is like a really effective way, not to like completely change a person's mind initially, but at the very least, you'll get the ball rolling. So it'll be something for them to think about. And then you kind of plant the seeds of change, hopefully, going forward.
To your point about stories, you may not like stories, but it's emotions. Emotions are powerful. And what does the other side do all the time to get their points across? They use the most powerful emotion, fear.
Of course.
Fear is a powerful motivator. And, you know, if you just suggest like a trans person's going to do something horrible to someone in a bathroom, like nobody wants to support something that might end up having that outcome. And so, we need to be really careful and clever in how we can turn that around and maybe make the fear in the opposite direction, because they have really powerful fear motivation against the trans community, and that's really hard to overcome in a lot of people.
Arlie, I actually want to follow up with you on this because I'm really interested in your perspective on this, being the campaign strategist with the National Political Advocacy Department of the ACLU. So kind of piggybacking off of these questions, I guess we'll kind of put them together. What have you found to be the most effective means at a larger national scale to be able to change people's minds when they come from these kind of mentalities, and also to be able to mobilize your base to be able to engage in advocacy in the ways that we've been discussing?
Yeah, for sure. There's so much good conversation going on. It's exciting, but yeah, I think, I think, Riley, what you're saying, and the way you've brought together a social media world and our legislative advocacy world, it's like, I mean, we're nothing without each other, right? And, there's that phrase of, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? Like if we pass a law in the legislature and no one's in the room and no one knows about it, doesn't matter. No, right? So I think, as the ACLU and in concert with so many of your organizations and this LGBTQ advocacy work and world, our jobs are to get people involved and caring, and that is the work that makes the law pass and the law matter. A lot of the work we do in the political advocacy department, and I think what all of you are doing every day is really bringing people up the ladder of engagement, as my amazing organizer friends have really taught me. How do we get someone to take a small action on it and show that they care about it? How do we get them to get a bigger action? How do we get them to host a thing? How do we get them to really be behind moving this forward? And in that process, changing hearts and minds and getting people to understand who we are. Yeah, I think that social media world is such a huge part of it, and I think a lot of our work is, taking those data pieces, taking the stories and the personal connection, putting them all together and trying to influence people in the best ways we can to get involved, because that's the only way that we're really making a difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think one of the most successful things I have ever seen as far as like getting people to stay involved long term, and it wasn't a massive group of people, it was like 4 or 5, but they stayed involved long term with multiple issues within this same district in California. And it was because they adopted this thing that was done by Hakeem Jeffries. It was called Congress on Your Corner, or summer sessions. It was literally, we would just show up, we wouldn't wear our ties or anything like that, jeans, t-shirt, whatever, and we'd hang out on the corner and we'd talk to people that lived in the district and just be like, hey, what's going on? What's affecting your lives these days? What's happening? And we do that every few weekends. And by doing that, we had the opportunity to follow up with some of the same people. And those people, came to us later and were just like, yeah, I never looked at politics as anything for me to be involved in. I just, as long as, I needed had what I needed, I was happy. It didn't matter. I didn't think y'all cared, but you all are out here every week talking to us. And now we have a personal relationship and we talk. And that allowed that opportunity to share those stories and that data and all of these things that, we talk about that really drive, this action. And it was really cool to see it not just be like a one-time action, but people continuously be involved. And I think, just showing up and being out there, like as your everyday self, can go a really long way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How about this? There's several questions, and this is a conversation that could go on very long. Thank you all again so much for being here. I think that we'll summarize some of the last questions I had into one to bring us it'll probably bring us up to an hour. So the last question I'll have is for both groups. What are the most common objections that you often face in the courses of your advocacy to LGBT identities, rights, and legislation? How have you overcome them? And have you found either more like approachable or more combative means for addressing those kinds of objections to be more persuasive. To bring in context, a lot of discussion online can tend to be very combative sometimes, and there's a reasonable discussion to be had about whether or not there's any merit to that. So I'm interested in perspectives from both sides about what strategies you think, as far as maybe rhetoric for engaging with these subjects that you've encountered, what you find to be the most effective.
I think the biggest hurdle is ignorance and stereotypes. Like when you say like gay person, lesbian person, trans person, people have a mental image, and like, you know, most of us even grew up with terrible ideas of what that was from popular media and stuff. And so that like the best weapon we have against it is just breaking those stereotypes. And like so often I'll just talk to someone and, you know, either I give them a chance to say something horrible. Sometimes people turn up in my DMs and they say a load of slurs at me and call me a man or whatever. And then I just take it and just talk back to them and just keep going. And then 2 hours later, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that you're such a normal person, or I feel really guilty. And that's happened so many times. And it's not a nice experience necessarily. And if you're not ready for it, don't do it. But like, there are other ways to break people's preconceived ideas of what an LGBT person is, just by existing, just, you know, by doing any kind of media stuff, or just being seen can make a big difference, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do a lot, you know, in my work. And what I've always set out to do is, you know, when I was even running for election, I wasn't saying like, hey, I'm a trans person, I'm running for office. It was, what can I do for you? How can I do this work for you? How can I make your life better? It's all about you, 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 you. It's not about me. It's not about me breaking barriers, being a trailblazer. Sure, that's great. But what can I do for you? And, you know, showing people that trans people aren't just looking for our rights. And, you know, I'm not pushing my rights down someone else's throat. I don't run a lot of bills on LGBT stuff because I'm in the toughest district in Colorado and I win by the smallest margin of anybody who runs. I have to do the work of the people in my district. And then I also do advocacy work on the side. So I have two jobs here. You know, the representative in District 27, and then the visible advocate who shows up to all the events and does all that stuff. But it's separate. I keep it separate because it's important that, you know, the people that I work for and in my political sphere understand that I'm just a trans person who works hard for the people in my community. And I'm really trying to work on my colleagues who, you know, say all sorts of dumb stuff on the microphone from time to time. You know, I have lunch with them. I run bills with them, even if they're like the most horrible things. I still sponsor bills with them because I need to rise above it and say, look, you know what? Eventually, people are just going to say, oh, yeah, Brianna Tatone, the state rep in Colorado, not necessarily the trans person. And I told the media, don't like highlight that unless it's relevant to the story. I'm a representative in Colorado. I do the work. I make laws here. And then I also, you know, Pride Month, I mentioned that I'm trans a lot, but it's separating that. New York Times, they did an article about my bill composting people. They never mentioned once that I was a trans person. Thank you for doing that, really. I mean, I love that when people know that I'm a trans person and I'm in politics and I'm doing this work. And I love that for the people who care about it. But it's also, you know, separating that. And it's hard because I want people to know who I am. I want people to be inspired, but I don't want to be pigeonholed into, oh, you're the trans politician. I'm just doing the work. And that's what's important. And I think that when more people do that, when there's doctors and teachers and everybody else doing that, that's what really shows people like, you know, your argument about trans people is totally wrong. We're just people doing the work in the community.
I remember 2 years ago, it was in 2019, and I went with the mayor of College Park, Patrick Wilhan, the city's first gay mayor, to a community meeting in Prince George's County. It was right after 2 trans people of color were executed in Prince George's County. And it was a big event for LGBT people. It was like, obviously, it was a terrible thing that happened. It happened. There was all these meetings. Stuff's going to happen. Things are going to change. We're going to act. We're going to work together. A few months later, it was like it never happened. everyone forgot. The community did not turn out like we needed it to turn out. And so while Pride Month came along, we saw the rainbow colors, we saw the flags, we still saw the people in our community like dying. And so when I saw like a bunch of queer people coming together to help distribute vaccines with the National Guard, to help distribute free healthcare products and toiletries to people, I knew that representation later, those people who are getting these free products are going to look back in the future and be like, hey, those people who are getting hurt right now, those are the same people who helped me. That person, that's a human being who gave me a vaccine. That's a human being who gave me free toiletries when I was in a place where I couldn't even afford those. I am going to make sure that I stand with those interests because they were there for me. I'm going to be there for them. And I think that type of representation and making sure that we are trans people, we are gay people, we're bi people, we're non-binary people, and we are part of the community, and the community should stick together. I think that positive representation is so important to get people on our side.
I think that's exactly right. And you know, Riley, back to kind of what you were asking about as well. I think part of our job in showing that representation, just being in office, being in jobs, being in the media, we are fighting some of that messaging from the other side, and some of those little sound bites that they have, right? Boys shouldn't play on the girls' team, and that's not what we're talking about, folks, right? So like we need to do that work to say, you know, these are trans girls, these are who's playing on teams, these are non-binary people, these are intersex people, like just you know, like you said, being ourselves, not falling into the traps of our opposition, who has unfortunately some good social media folks too. But you know, I think through our personalities, through our stories, through our data, through the work that we do, we can overcome their harmful and uninformed sound bites, dare I say. So just, yeah, it's great work, and great to be on a call with all of you who are really doing all that work in so many different ways.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually, to summarize, because we are coming up on an hour, so let me say again, thank you all so much for being here. I will respect all of your time. Just to emphasize the point, I don't know how many people are watching on other people. We have several other people who do social media on here, who may or may not be streaming right now. I have at least 500 people who are watching right now, and it's really cool to think that there's at minimum 500 people who have been able to take a lot away from this conversation, and who hopefully can be able to do a lot better legislative advocacy on their own, and you know, using social media. So yeah, it's just really cool. I've really enjoyed this conversation. If everyone wants to say goodbye and shout out who they are, you know, give like an outro or whatever you want to do, then you are more than welcome. But we'll wrap up the panel. So thank you all so much.
Thank
Hey,
you,
everybody.
Riley.
Thanks.
I'm Brianna Tone, Brianna for CO on Twitter, Brianna for Colorado, Instagram, and Facebook. And eventually I'm gonna get on Twitter. It's my goal.
Don't do it. It's horrible.
I mean, no. I mean, not Twitter. TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
I'm committed to get on TikTok.
It is. Yeah. No, it's actually very randomly. Last night I posted a video there. It's already got like, I think about 5,000 views from posting at like midnight last night. Like, TikTok is weird and very different from YouTube, but I am figuring it out.
Let's talk. I need help.
Well, certainly. Well, hey, talk to me if you ever need any help. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
One quick shout out I want to give. Tomorrow I will be at the Pride Month Drag Brunch fundraiser, which is helping raise money for an amazing LGBTQ plus candidate in Annapolis, Keanu Smith Brown. So if anybody out there is in the Maryland area and would like to go out there and help raise money for an amazing LGBTQ plus candidate, I would love to see you there.
All right. Thank you so much, Dylan. Katie, Destiny, Grayson.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun to be on here. I'm Katie Montgomery. If you want to see a dickhead arguing on the internet, come to Twitter and watch me in action. And if you like death metal, check out my band.
You can shout yourself out if you want to.
You know me. If anybody has any questions on how to actually get in touch with their legislators and how to actually create a relationship, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. I've done it a dozen times. So
Yeah, and it's nice because Grayson is in my Discord. Oh, and I guess this is, why not? I'll shout out myself. Yeah, so you can find me at discord.gg/RGR. My name is Riley Grace Rochong. Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this panel. This is like the first Twitch politics panel where I think it actually went over with Zero Blood Sports and everyone just genuinely enjoyed the conversation. I don't know. I learned a lot. It was cool. It was nice to be able to kind of like have like a good, a thermometer to think like, okay, we're doing these things on social media. How do these match up to what people who are working in legislation and who are experts in this field, like how does this match up to what they're doing,
Yes, different world.
Yeah, it's entirely different. But I mean,
cool because I think both sides have had the conversation, but it's really cool to see both sides have the conversation like in a public open platform like that, and everybody kind of get to hear people talk off each other on that. So,
yeah, I don't know. It was exceptionally cool. And also just because I think that especially like I was really interested in Arlie's opinion. I'm disappointed that I didn't get to hear them talk as much. But just like, it's very difficult, like with people who work on like the ACLU, and now I have like several friends who are in the ACLU, right? So that's why I was able to get Arlie onto the panels. I was able to pull a couple strings. But it's just like very interesting to me because you have people who are kind of like, I wanted to ask this kind of question. We didn't have enough time for it, but I want to ask the question, like, a lot of like higher end legislative advocacy usually happens in like a black box that most people can't see into. And so it's like, I really want to ask, like, what happens in that black box? Like, what's happening in there? And I tried to get at that a little bit with some of the other questions, like, hey, what do you do in the course of your advocacy? How's that changed? But like, that's what I'm always like super interested in is like, what's happening in the black box,
Katie, you think you're lying, but you're not.
I know, I don't.
I worked in bars for a long time in DC, and like some of the shit you would see like elected officials like do, thinking nobody was listening. I'm like,
absolutely.
Well, no, we like live here and work here, right? Like we know we could easily just turn around and go. Like I'm amazed at what people get away with because like we could just turn around and go to a reporter and be like,
yeah,
you know what
especially now everyone's got a camera
the other day. You know what I saw? A good old.
Yeah,
I remember I was a page in the Maryland General Assembly, and I was in front of a representative for Cecil County. Now I was there with two other Cecil County boys who were also interns and pages or whatever you want to call them, coffee jockeys. And we were all there, and we were three white boys. And so he sees two white boys from Cecil County. I guess he assumed I was one too. I was born and raised and bred in PG County, which, if you don't probably know, majority black county. Mm-hmm. He said, and I say PG County, and some people, a lot of young people don't care anymore, but PG County for a lot of politicians is offensive to hear those words instead of Prince George's, because a lot of people think it's diminishing it by just saying PG instead of like the full title. And I remember I just said offhand like PG County, and he said, oh, they don't like that. I'm like, who? The PG County people. You know what it stands for? Pretty ghetto. And he says that to a group of three pages who were all in high school at the time. And I'm just standing there like, that is super brazen. It's like unbelievably brazen. And it's unbelievable to me.
I can address my chat now that we have, now that the more professional people are not here. Can I get some yikes in chat for that one? Yeah. It's also very interesting, right? I'm sorry. I'm just like thinking about this because, technically, I don't know, like there's a couple of things that are interesting from this, just like not, like we're talking to like the general audience, but like technically, this would be the point where probably most of the law school people would leave. But like I sent out an email to like my law school and to the LGBT organization, and like interesting, I mean, I don't know. I need to think more about this because no one from the law school showed up, but we ended up having like thousands of viewers, right? Like it's super weird to me that people wouldn't want to like take that initiative. I don't know. That probably says something more about like the legal education aspect, but like it's kind of interesting, like, kind of with the theme of the panel itself being that like, oh, legislative advocacy and social media are like progressively overlapping more and more and more. It's interesting here that I'm thinking like, oh, this is like a law school setting, but also like it's very, like I have to like, there's like small nuances in how I act differently in like one setting versus the other, but they're increasingly like that line is like disappearing more and more with time.
So I think that sometimes though, like that line comes with like this, it's because of this bit of like, what's the word I'm looking for, where people just, this bit of privilege because you already feel like you have the access. So why do I need to show up to this kind of thing, right? Whereas people who are looking at this from a social media perspective, they don't normally get this insight. They don't normally get to so to them, they're like, holy shit, this is an incredible opportunity where I get to hear people who are involved in this every day, have conversations with people I like to watch. Like, so I think it's the mindset of how they're approaching it that may cause that difference, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely think that there's a part of that. Also, like people in law, I don't know. I'm very critical of the legal education process. I'm incredibly critical of it. Like the reason I spend a lot of time on social media, ironically enough, is because I have more fun on here than in my legal education, right? And that's saying a lot, you know, considering how toxic social media can be. But you know, I do think that there's probably something to be said that like, especially this past year since we've been online with all schooling, and maybe it'll change this upcoming year because everything is going back to being in person. But like this past year, since everything was online, it was incredible. Like I'm one of the, so it's it's called a co-chair. It's effectively like a shared presidency, like a shared leadership position of my law school's LGBT organization. It's been incredibly difficult to actually get people in my law school to want to do things together. And I think that part of that is probably just because like the legal education process, because everything is graded competitively, really disincentivizes people from getting close to each other because you're always thinking like, oh, I got to beat the other person. Oh, I got to beat the other people. Whereas like on social media, I like we can all like team up and figure this shit out and do good things like this. Like this is good.
Yeah, I don't think that's unique to law school. I had the exact same like vibe as that in engineering. Like I like all these people, they're nice, but if they do well, then I do comparatively less well. So which is kind of crappy, isn't it?
It's interesting. I hate that. I mean, like it incentivizes you to work hard. Like, sure, like I ended up pushing myself more in my legal education, and that's why I have like a decent understanding of the law, at least in the respect that I was taught the law, you know, or like on the subject matters I have been taught on the law, right? But also like it kind of sucks because I live in Baltimore and my friends are primarily like social media people. How does that even happen? Yeah, so I don't know. It's just very interesting, but yeah. I don't know. The panel was good. Do any of y'all have like any thoughts from the panel or any like concluding thoughts or anything? Now we're kind of like, you know, it's after, it's whatever.
I guess just like what you were saying, how where you have an hour, and I guess an hour sounds like a long time, but then you say like one thing and ask one question and it's over, and you're like, man, I could talk about this for literally days. And there's so much stuff that I want to learn from like legal people and stuff, because that's one of the things I think all the time is like the gender criticals, like the anti-trans crew in the UK, they set up some crappy shell organization on Twitter, and then all of a sudden they're given evidence in Parliament, and it's like, how have they done this? How are they making, you know, actual difference when they're like nobodies with no expertise and nothing, and they're doing something that I'm not doing. And it's interesting to find how to do that and what's effective, and hear it from like law people's point of view of like who they listen to and why and all this kind of stuff. So
yeah. Oh, and also don't worry about the email.
Somebody should document their whole journey getting involved into like politics and like how they did it and who they taught, like, you know what I mean? Like, what does that look like for the average person?
Yeah, that you could be a bit dodgy though, because you'd be like, you know, I attended this person's like drinks party, and then we had to go back to their house, and we
oh no,
we did like 15
You're like, I
shots
can't
of
talk because
tequila,
I'll
and now
incriminate
I'm
myself.
Oh God. Yeah, no, I mean,
Riley, did you say something about me replying to all?
Oh yeah, don't worry about it. No, that it was funny because Katie replied all to everyone on the initial, like there's like a set of like more confidential emails because y'all aren't getting the Zoom link. What the fuck do you think I'm making sure that shit is under lock and key? But Katie replied all to the first email, and like the first question was like, can you please just provide like one additional confirmation you'll be there? And she was like, yeah, boy. And it's like
It's so good though.
Arlie saw it, Grayson saw it, everyone at my law school saw it. It's just like don't worry about it. It's fun. It's just funny.
I think it's good when that fourth wall breaks. It gives a little bit of humanization to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Shows that I'm a real person.
Yeah, and also like it's nice because like it tends to be like in the legal field, everyone is like super duper formal, and I kind of like breaking that down a little bit because like there are a lot of legal professionals I've gotten close to. Like for example, my friend in the ACLU who set me up, who put me in contact with Arlie. I initially met through my law school through a very like legal formalistic setting. And at first it was super awkward because we had to address each other like, oh, super formal, super legalistic, yada, yada, yada. But then eventually like we just start having like progressively more casual conversation to the point where it's just like, we just text each other and we're just like, I'm like, oh my God, this cool thing just happened to me. And she's like, no way. Oh my God. Just like, it's a lot cooler when it gets like that more casual level. So I don't think that was a problem.
Yeah. I think that's
yeah.
one of the things that would hold me back from like politics or law stuff is that I just, I mean, I guess it's because I'm a metalhead, but I just like straight talk everything. And people would be like, oh, what do you think of this? I'd be like, it sounds fucking shit. And you're meant to be like, oh, actually, no, I don't think it necessarily optimizes the whatever. And it's like, I just want to say what it
that I'm
is.
going to say this, but there's been a lot of politicians lately who've been pretty brazen at the mouth.
I can do the Trump. I can be the next Trump.
So
yeah, I mean, like I do think that there's.
I think though there is like a space for people who to just be a little bit more frank and like not use so much of this like code switching, so to speak, between like the social media world and the legal world, because there really is almost like this code switch that happens between like I know for me when I'm talking to Riley and just chilling, and then when I'm like going into a meeting with somebody at work, it's a very different like who I am and how I speak.
We need to have multi-party synergy and optimize how these meetings are going through multiple department chairs, and like nobody knows what you're saying, like that nobody has any clue. No. And if you say it as confusing enough, then nobody can hold you accountable when you're saying we're just not going to pass the bill. Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of time what happened. Definitely in committee, because in committee nobody's paying attention anyway.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's the case. From like working in again, like from working in in Congress this past spring, this past session, it's amazing that like a lot of the strategies just end up boiling down to like, are we gonna like try and like keep the bill from being passed or not, or keep it from being advanced or not, or like make it die in committee, right? And a lot of the formalities. It was interesting because someone brought it up during the panel, but we didn't really explore it as much. I think it was Jeremy brought up like poison pilling amendments, like how someone will like suggest an amendment and make it like super formalistic. And if you look at what's happening on paper, like a transcript of the actual meeting, it seems like a casual, like even a good faith conversation. But like the point of the amendment is literally just to like get it into the bill so it doesn't end up passing through the legislature, because people will end up opposing it later to the point where it wouldn't get like the necessary vote it needs, right? Like it looks super formalistic, dry, blah, blah, blah on paper and in the recording, but like that's kind of the intention there, So just like interesting to see how different examples of that end up handing out in the legislatures.
Yes, I don't know if that's a UK thing, but I get the idea that it's quite an American thing to like have this bill and then people tack on some related stuff and then it like gets passed and you sneak things through or you don't. Because I remember there was like
bills and things like that.
Yeah, because there was like the COVID relief bill. They were like, oh, the COVID relief bill, they tried to like sneak through something banning trans healthcare or something in the COVID relief bill. I was just like, God, it's just, you got to be constantly watching everything, haven't you?
It's weird because a lot of that, I guess you could refer to as quote unquote pork barrel politics, where a random bill will have like $20 million for like a local hospital in the middle of Timbuktu, right? But the only way you're going to get certain politicians to sign on to really important legislation is you agree to this random as hell, like, yeah, we need a 7th bike lane in the middle of nowhere. Oh, what is this bill? Oh, it's on the nuclear arsenal of the United States military. Like, okay, but when we have a 50 Senate majority, like literally you're just going to have to play ball. Like if Joe Manchin said tomorrow that every Wisconsin has to do a handstand every morning in order to not be thrown in a federal penitentiary, then God damn it, that's what's going to be put in there,
Which is why we need to get out and vote for more blue senators. That's name of the game, fam. Go out and flip more states.
Flip more. Run for offices and do things, because like I don't know. I do genuinely think that like part of it is just a not understanding how to do these things and what the access is to it and how to like run for a local office, or even like how to know when people are having an assembly meeting, right? Riley, you showed up and testified on the trans panic defense, and anybody could do that. But sometimes people don't realize how easy that is. And it could be like overwhelming to be like, oh, I have to go talk in front of people on this thing. But
just how do you get into that? Like, it's the kind of thing that I would you know, if
Me, quite
someone was
literally,
like,
it was at a bar. I worked at a bar, and I had nothing to do with politics. I have zero college education. I was in the military. I got stationed in DC and never left. And I was working at bars there, and I was really upset about the tip minimum wage and some of the things that was happening there. And I got involved in working on that. And somebody who was involved in politics in DC was like, hey, you know, you should really consider doing this, you know, for real. You care about this. Like, and I was like, I don't have a degree. Like, what do you want with me? But it really was just finding like that person who is like, actually, you can do this. And then talking to them, going through all of my experience. How do I word my experience and pull through those things to highlight how important it is for these things? And then just getting involved in little stuff like Dylan was talking about having a fundraiser coming up, you know, showing up to those things.
Tomorrow in Annapolis. What? I'm sorry.
If I were still on the East Coast, I'd show up.
Riley.
Wait, hold on. When is this happening tomorrow? And where? When and where?
Tomorrow noon in Annapolis.
I have a picnic tomorrow at noon.
It's gonna be a drag show though.
But I'm doing a picnic. All right, listen. If no one shows up, if it goes for longer than an hour, then I will drive because it's only like a half-hour drive from where I'm at. So if no one shows up to the picnic I'm hosting tomorrow, which is very possible and likely, then I will go. I will go to what you're hosting.
Brunch is from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
To 1:30 p.m. All right. If it works out that no one shows up, which is entirely likely since no one showed up to this event, which I thought was the event that people were going to be much more likely to show up to, then sure, I shall be there. Okay.
Wonderful. Okay.
All right.
I'll send you some information on it.
Sounds good. All right. I'm gonna head out, fam. Good
Thanks
chat.
for hosting, Riley. More of these. It was awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Again, thank you all so much for being here. I don't know. I like this conversation. I like figuring out how to do these things. Someday we'll have a how to get elected arc. Figure that shit out too, you know? Or Dylan, you've already been elected, so we got to talk to you more about how you did that.
Appointed.
We need to get a trans person elected in the UK, but someone who's prepared to have their life ruined because the first person who does it is going to get fucking destroyed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be the first.
But for the election thing, just wait 2 years.
Just wait 2 years?
Wait 2 years.
Wait 2 years. All right, we'll have an election. We'll have a how to get elected from social media positions arc in 2 years. All right, counting on it. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be Pogger's champion. And someday someone is going to go.
Are you actually running for office?
Nothing's public, but let me just say, like, I've had a lot of conversations. I have everything that I would need to when it comes to like endorsements and everything like, set up. It's just a matter of me just waiting to pull the trigger. That's all it is. But I'm not.
I work with some PACs and things. So if you ever want to have,
it would just be city council. So I don't know if that would be very helpful.
All right. Well, sounds good. Anyway. We will wait to hear on that more later. All right. I'm gonna end the call. So thank you all for being here. Talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bow, 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 ba bum, ba bum, bum, boom, boom, bow. Great job, Riley. Great panel. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is stream still live? Yeah, you should still we're still here. We're still hanging. Is Destiny still streaming? I know that he said that he'd be cool to chat for a little bit. I'm not sure if there's too much chat. I'm just kind of interested in like his feedback because I know that he's interesting because he's like, I mean, Dylan and Katie have done it to some extent. He is? Okay, cool. I'm gonna give him a call really quick. But yeah, it's just interesting because like what do you call it? He's one of the only people who's like actually like very on the large scale taken his audience and like mobilize them. He might be grumpy. He's playing a bad game again. 12-hour stream yesterday. Oh, okay. Destiny is a very particular person. All right. Well, I'm gonna give him a call. Or actually, hold on. Let me just check and make sure that he's in the decent mood. What's he doing? What's he up to? Bow, bow. That's a person's name. Go look at research docs. Yeah.
About U.S. interventionism. I still have some more articles I need to read.
Okay. phone. Hello?
What do you want?
What do I want? What do you want?
A lot of things. I want to be diamond in League of Legends. Can you help me?
I have no interest or capacity to help you there.
Oh, well.
Yeah. What'd you think of the panel?
I thought it was cool.
Yeah. It was actually interesting. Just like coming out of it. Like I don't want to like say that I don't know. I don't like valuing like different people's perceptions over others. But it was interesting just like hearing about how a lot of what people who are mainly involved in social media, like how that kind of measured up to what people who are like involved in it, like kind of, that's like their field of expertise. It's interesting kind of like using what they're doing as kind of a thermometer to see if we're doing the right things. And there are a lot of people who like, like stuff that you were talking about. I thought Katie and Dylan were really good on the panel. About like talking about like actual things to be able to mobilize people and how to effectively get people involved in social media. So I thought that was actually a really good conversation. So it could very well be the case that like people, I don't know, like if I was Arlie or if I was representative to Tone, I feel like they should have been taking notes because there's a lot of things that they probably could have taken from that conversation into their advocacy. So that was interesting. I didn't expect that. I expected it to be more like people in social media learning from them. That seemed to be like a decent like exchange of ideas. So I thought that was neat.
Yeah. I feel like for this is personal preference, obviously. I feel like when you have the opportunity to intermingle people like that, I appreciate more depth versus breadth. There's a word there. So maybe having one less person from each side and focusing on just one or two topics to like really get into it, I think could have been really interesting too. Like the difference in like how do you advocate for certain issues, or what does a legislative victory look like? Where does that start at? I think those could have been interesting conversations too. Not that this was bad or anything, just that like a different style of going for it. Because there are definitely people there that it would have been interesting to hear more from too, I think.
Yeah. I think that's true. So like there are a couple things I wanted to do with this. This was also, so like one of the biggest things I wanted to accomplish from this, aside from like getting a general kind of like thermometer for how we're doing things online, compared to generally how they do things in the, in like the ACLU, Free State and so on. Was also to kind of like establish that connection. Because the nice thing now is that like, you like now we've all been able to like have an event where we're able to like talk to people from the ACLU and from other organizations and state representatives. It kind of establishes like a good precedent so that if we want to like do more conversations like this in the future, it's going to be a lot easier too, right? Because I think
you can just point to like we did this panel here and it went well and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So like usually I like just from my experience, like talking to people who work in these fields, right? A big thing that will really dissuade them or make them like scared to do these kind of events, or like kind of the fear of like, oh, this is happening on the internet. Oh, any of a million things could go wrong, which, is true. Like any of a number of things could go wrong. It's just a matter of like, do you have people who are like operating with best practices and like doing everything they can to like navigate the space and ensure that things go over constructively. So I think that like being able to like, have this point to be able to like dissuade some of those fears, because now it's like, if we want to talk to Arlie again, or if we want to talk to like Jeremy again, if we want to talk to
bring them back for the Thunderdome, for the real Twitch experience.
Oh my god, no, I don't listen, I do not want to pull that. Like that's something I am very specifically trying to avoid going forward. I am non-toxic constructive Riley. All right, this is my new arc. And I just I don't know, like I would like to do more events like this. I don't want to bring them into the fucking Thunderdome. I'd rather like these are precious little people that I want to protect and just and make them think that we're not all just going at each other's throats all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but no, so I think that there's definitely possibility for being able to get either those same people or people like them for more in-depth conversations in the future, which is what I'm going to be looking forward to. That's what I'm having in the back of my head now going forward, is like, all right, now that we have like this as precedent, like, what kind of subjects do we want to explore like more in depth, especially right now, since there's, I actually kind of like that it's not an election season. I mean, like they get a lot more attention during election season, but right now, we're coming right out of the 2020 presidential election. We're going to be going to midterms before too long, or that, it's going to, like a lot of those discussions are going to be starting up in a little bit. So now it's like a really good time to have a lot of these discussions and figure out like, all right, going in the midterms, which are going to be really important. what are going to be the best strategies like going in there so that, you know, we are able to maximize our chances of having a really good Congress coming out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that'll be good. God, what else? I don't know. Yeah, it's all good. I wonder if it's going to be possible. Do you think it'd be possible to like organize? I know I've talked to Josie a little bit before about like getting people. There are like some strategies for like getting in touch with state legislatures, like mass call-ins, which just thinking back to the time that I was working there would have been terrifying to get at once, right? Because usually what happens in the course of
Would have been terrifying to get a what? Say that again.
like mass call-ins, or like you just like pick a random time and then you just get like the number for the office when you know that they are in session and the representative is going to be there. And you just have like a bunch of people call in. To the best of your ability, you should try to get people who are from their district, because then those are people who they'll actually take the time and listen to. If you say like, hey, I'm so-and-so, and the first thing that they'll ask is, all right, what's your zip code? And if you don't have the answer that they're looking for, they'll just hang up and they'll be like, oh, well, we'll call you back later. But like, you know, the idea is like, maybe if, like for me, if I get large enough to where I'm able to like, especially like for people who are here in Maryland, be like, hey, people who are from this district, we're going to do a thing where we're calling this legislature at so-and-so time. Maybe we even do it on stream. And just like try to get a conversation, because I feel like, just like with testifying at the state level before, how that was reasonably easy to do on stream, that there's probably a lot of other things that could be done like on stream with an audience. Like there's just like a whole world of possibilities there that are probably just not tapped into that we could probably mess around with.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So me thinking about those. All right. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I just want to get your thoughts on the panel. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Talk to you later, all right?
Thanks for inviting me. Have fun. Be careful. Yeah. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thanks for being on. I really appreciated your input. Talk to you later.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, also,
Also?
not everybody lives in your dumbass fucking time zone, okay? This shit needs to be way fucking later, all right? You're losing a lot of audience members by putting this at 2 a.m. PST, okay?
Listen.
Be nice, okay?
I know. The reason I had to put it here because one of the panelists, this was like the only time that it worked for that. Like it was super hard to schedule everyone. So I basically like this was the only time that worked for Katie, who had to go, who's working on UK time, and then this was the only time that was early enough for her and late enough for Representative Tatone, since it was pretty early for her.
Gotcha.
So yeah, like I understand. I originally was shooting for like 5. This is the best I could work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.
All right. Well, yeah, I know. Listen, I'm sorry. I understand. I tried. When you were talking, when you were working with UK people, this is like if you wanted to have Katie, and also Katie was really good to have on. Katie was really good to have on the panel, so I think that was worth it, right? More this time, please, RGR. No, this is like a very rare occurrence. Okay, like only very specialized events. Yeah, so no, this wasn't gonna work. But yeah, I don't know. I'm happy. This all went over perfectly. Like, holy shit. Yeah, we were able to establish a really good precedent, and now hopefully I can like show this to be so like I think so I've normally gone like I'm moving towards like shorts, but I do think I have to put this up on my channel. I think what I'll do is I'll put this up on the channel, and maybe next week we can just like make a bunch of shorts from like the highlights of this. How does that sound? Like maybe just like we put the whole panel up on my channel, and then we like make a bunch of, and maybe I'll relist like a couple of other conversations. Yes, please put on that. Fine. It just kind of sucks because like there are a lot of conversations I don't know. I'm moving towards like a new. I'd be up for this being on the channel, then shorts for convenience. All right, then that's what we'll do. We'll put this, because I'm still experimenting with like my channel. We'll put this up on the channel, and then we'll make like a lot of shorts, or maybe you can make all this in the shorts and then do the raw thing. Oh, I might do that. Maybe I'll like make a bunch of shorts out of the video, and then I'll put the actual video on Patreon. That could be the play, because then like all the same content will get onto my channel just via shorts, you know. So that might be what I do. That could be the play. And then I get and then I get Patreon monies. I get paid, which, by the way, I did a lot of work for this, so I don't feel. Well, actually, I don't know about that. I'll think about it. Anyway, those darn Brit bongers and their weird time zones. Yeah. Yeah, I'm cool with that division of Patreon shorts as well. Yeah, like the content will get onto the channel in some way. It's just a matter of figuring out exactly how. Okay. A panel that didn't create a week of drama. I know. Listen, I am the best panel host. Dylan, fuck out of here. Hans, fuck out of here. Prime K's, fuck out of here. I am the best panel host. Yes. Good shit. All right. Well, yeah, I'm gonna be streaming later. Oh, by the way. All right, so here's the summary. Get into the Discord if you haven't already. Discord.gg/RGR. What the fuck are you doing? Get in there. Hey, people in the Discord chat, you need to make the cell right now. Use animated emotes. Make the cell. Get the people in here, all right? Get them in here. Get them in here. So that's the first thing. Second thing, we are doing a charity tournament later today. It's for Yu-Gi-Ohs. Sign up. I'm going to extend the time so that you're able to sign up for it still. So sign up, join the Discord, and ask around how to do it. It's relatively easy, all right? So sign up for the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. We're going to be doing that later. We're going to be raising money for charity. All right. And then after that, I don't know. Maybe we'll start going. Maybe we'll just make shorts. Yeah, that might be what we do later. I'm cool with that. Yeah, fuck it. Let's just make shorts later. Or maybe we can do that later. I don't know. I'll figure out what we're doing for like the stream later tonight. There's gonna be a lot of streaming today. All right. So get in here. Oh, hey, look at all of these wonderful emotes that we have. What are all of you chumps doing not in this Discord using these awesome emotes? Look at all this shit. Yeah, that's great. So get in there. All right. Let's see. Who do I want to raid y'all into? How many people do we got right now? We have 172. All right, that's pretty good. Hey, where do you... Okay, going to my job. Everyone go drink water and sign up for you. Yeah, true. All right, so who are we raiding y'all into? Let's see. We got... Oh, Joe Lewis. Hey, I'll raid y'all into Joe Lewis. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Joe Lewis. All right, go say hi to Joe Lewis. Yep. All right, I'm sending you off. Have a good night or day. I'll talk to you later. Yep, bye. Oh, wait. Sorry, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 2.5, 1. Okay, bye.